Okay, awesome. Yes, we're gonna start.
Yes. Not right this second, but just
The simcha. I may not be able to organize that, but we'll figure it out. Okay, guys, we're about to start. Welcome, everybody. For everyone who can't, there we go. Everyone can get settled. I want to make a very, very, very special thank you to Hindy, Mrs. Hindy Greisman. I'm like flyer Mrs. in person Hindy. Okay, great. Lesson learned. She is an incredible friend that I've been so lucky to have met. First, an amazing shout out to an amazing organization called the Women's Circle. They're doing the fundraiser now. If you'd like the support, go for it. So I originally met her at the Women's Circle, and then we had the great zchus of taking our Kallah teacher course together. And I think that had really definitely bonded us. And I am so lucky to call her my friend and that she agreed to speak for us. We are so lucky, and I think she deserves a round of applause just for that. She is the best balance because she has not just two, she has many other hats and jobs, such as a mother and a wife and so many other things that she does for the community and her friends and family. But the two that she's going to be discussing tonight are her time as a doula and her time as a Kallah teacher. And both of them, I feel, really bring such an incredible balance and viewpoint that Hindy has. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'm so excited to hear.
Thank you. I'm humbled and honored. Oh, I have to wear that?
Just a little clip of it.
Okay. I'll do that.
There you go. Yeah.
Almost. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, Michal. Yes, I only agreed because we're friends. Otherwise, I told her I'm not a speaker. So she introduces me as her friend, and then we can sit here. So I'm Hindy Greisman. Yes, I'm a wife, mother of 7 beautiful children, miracles. Every single birth every child is a miracle. And a community person. I doula for, okay, we'll talk about it in a minute. And then most recent Kallah teacher. So we'll start from way back. Why did I become a doula? I think it kind of started, birth always fascinated me. In my class, I don't know if you know Rishi Deitch. We all know Chanel Lipsker. So her mother, Rishi, was probably the home birth guru to Crown Heights. So me and her daughter Shola were really good friends. So the concept of home birth was always, always there buzzing. In high school, I remember writing a paper, not that I knew a word what I was talking about then, but I wrote a paper on home birth. And when I was in Churro, that's what, we're doing debates, and that's what I spoke about also. Everything was about that. But we were in 12th grade, we were doing our Tay-Sachs, the blood work for marriage and stuff. So one of my friends just started hyperventilating. I didn't know what I was doing, but I went over to her, took a paper bag, and just, calmed her down and practiced the breathing with her. And Mrs. Vale was there, and she's like, Hindy, you should be a doula. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. And that's kind of probably where it kind of started. I think the paper bag was probably from the days of 770, way back when we used to watch Hakafis and people were fainting. But that's probably where we got that from. But that's a whole nother. Good old days. Yes, those days. But anyways, so I actually started as a doula before I got married. I went with, I can't say, okay. I went with someone with 2 of her kids, her first 2 kids, before I was married, before I even took the course. Just went as, a friend, which really a doula is. And after I got married, I took the doula training. And right after that, I found that I was pregnant with my first son. It was beautiful. I'm like, okay, now I have to do something for myself. So I have to go and take birthing classes. And I sat there in the first class. I'm like, okay, I think we did that. But anyways, there was a lot of, after that initial training in Crown Heights, there's a lot of us that took that training. I think we were maybe 20 or 30 doulas, and we used to get together every 4 to 6 weeks, just, to chit chat and stuff like that. And we're always hearing, sometimes it was to learn, sometimes it was just to grow from each other, or not to vent, but to unload if it was a difficult birth. Obviously everyone's privacy was, kept quiet and stuff like that. But we kept on hearing, oh, I wish my Kallah teacher told me that. I wish I knew that. And I wish I heard that before. We always used to hear that from, not always, but we heard that very often from our clients, from our mothers that we were working with. And I was like, I wish I can just bridge that gap a little bit, because why should anybody feel, thank you. Why should anyone feel that they're coming to a place where they're just missing pieces when they're getting there? So that was in the back of my mind, but it really wasn't on my bucket list. It really wasn't something that I was really thinking about. And then about 4 years ago, it was right before the training took place. I had a teenage brother who passed away. He was 19 and he had a brain tumor and passed away. Taras Mishpacha obviously was a mitzvah that he never got to do. The training was just about to start. I was not in the, headspace to do that, but I had a very good cousin friend that pushed me to at least apply, and that's where the journey started. And I really took the course and do this in his chus, in his memory. So that's how I became a Kallah teacher. And for a while we were still doing both. And then Baruch Hashem, with my own growing family and concentrating on the Kallahs, I said, you know what, we're gonna put the doula part a little bit on the back burner, doing that a little bit, but mostly concentrating on the Kallahs and helping them get to where they need to be when they're ready to, hire that doula. It's actually cute because some of the students, some of the Kallahs that age that I have now are my first students when I was, 19, teaching in Beis Rivka, teaching them when they were 5 years old about their body then, and then we moved up and further on in life. So it's cute. So that's the background where I am today. So just gonna talk a little bit about labor, birth, and different things like that. Not in any specific order. And we can do questions best probably at the end, and we'll take it from there, okay? Do you have pen and paper for anyone who wanted? Okay. Michal will have a bowl, and if you have any questions, you can put it in. I'll do my best to answer them on the spot. If something needs, a little bit more attention, I'm more than happy for you to reach out to me. I'll say my number now. I'll say it later. 917-744-4670. Hindy Greisman. Hindy with a Y. I just said that so you have more time to write. 917-744-4670. Okay.
Just introduce the.
Oh, okay. So here is this the bowl that I'm going to be putting it in?
No, the bowl is going to be passed around.
I thought you had a few questions first that you wanted to put in.
I
Okay. So here's the pens, here's paper. Michal will set it up and we'll pass it around.
Take paper and a pen.
Oh, right. That's a good idea.
And then that way you can be
Perfect. Let's do that.
taking notes, and then you can put questions into the bowl.
Here's paper.
Are we not allowed to ask questions like this?
You can, it just, sometimes it disrupts the flow. And then we end up going on a tangent, which we can talk about all night, really. There's so many topics that we can just go off on. So better if it's really most of the talk that we're doing tonight is more table around discussion. It's not like we have to cover ground because you guys, I don't know if you're before or after the birth part. In the classes, like if you've done the birth and the lactation, you've done all those already? Some, yeah. So you're really covering it from a medical perspective. So here we're just more of like a different atmosphere on that. So I think it makes more sense to wait until a little bit later to do questions. Is that fine?
Yes. And
okay.
Feel free to write your questions We're going to be submitting them to.
Well, if you want to write notes and you need a fuller paper, then take that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to start with understanding the mitzvah of Puruvu just a bit and its blessings, and then we'll do a little bit of labor, birth, and postpartum. Okay. So understanding the mitzvah of Puruvu. So the blessings and the bracha of raising a big family is something that brings obviously a tremendous simcha to the parents. Every child brings tremendous nachas and simcha to the fortunate parents. And every single birth multiplied by each individual milestone of every child increases that simcha in the house. So of course, in order to reap those tremendous joy and benefits, it's crucial that throughout one's marriage, you have to be constantly investing in your shalom bayis and spend time discussing and really investing in each other and remembering why you guys decided to do this in the first place and why you guys fell in love in the first place. And this way it's more in a happy tone to enjoy all these brachas. Our marriage is like a plant. Everyone needs their space, their ear, their love and attention, okay? So from a halachic perspective, when we're talking about the mitzvah of Puruvu, it entails a man's obligation to have a son and a daughter, a grandson and a granddaughter. It says in the pasuk, "Vayivarach Isam Elokim, Vayemer Lahem Elokim Pru Uruvu Amilu Es Haaretz V'Kosha." This is the only mitzvah in the Torah that it actually precedes the words Vayivarach Isam, that Hashem blessed them, indicating that there's a lot of revealed brachas that come along with this mitzvah. Okay. So that's D'Oraisa. And then we have D'Rabbanan, a Yid is obligated to have children as long as he is able to. Now, a quote from the Rambam, I'm just going to say it in English. This mitzvah is described as a mitzvah rabbah. It says, Afal Pi, whatever, uses the word mitzvah rabbah when it talks about the mitzvah of Puruvu. It's so great that this mitzvah is the only circumstances that a Sefer Torah is allowed to be sold is for the mitzvah of Talmud Torah and for the mitzvah of Puruvu. Because the purpose of Torah is to perpetuate its learning for future generations. And that's only possible with the mitzvah of Puruvu. So the obligation of having children begins from the moment a person is married, just like the commandment of a bris milah is from when a baby is 8 days old. So if a baby is unhealthy, then the mitzvah is pushed off until the health is restored. Actually, not only until it's restored, but until a week after that. Once the baby is well enough for a bris, then we count another week. But as soon as that happens, the mitzvah of bris milah is not supposed to be delayed. And it's actually interesting. I have it in, I know it's kind of a little bit later. It's a mitzvah to have the bris on the 8th day. It's such a significant day to have it on, and special to have it on the 8th day, that if a bris is pushed off, the day that the bris is held is considered the 8th day. The mitzvah of Puruvu is actually on the men. Although the woman is not actually commanded, she gets the mitzvah because obviously it's more than her just participation in order to help her husband fulfill that. Yeah, I said it's more than just her participation. Furthermore, it's quoted in a sicha in Vayakel that just as the women, they, on their own initiative, they ran to donate items for the Mishkan without being commanded to do so. The women had the inner Yiras Shamayim that causes them to understand their role in perpetuating Am Yisrael, and they don't require an explicit commandment in order to drive them to fulfill this mitzvah. So it actually says that one of the first few questions that when an Neshama goes up Lamaila, in Shemayim, they'll ask him, one is, were they the best so-and-so that they were able to be? What do they do to bring Mashiach? And they will be held accountable in their Sekes B'Priyurvia. Did the person try to have as many children that Hashem would grant them? So that's in general about the mitzvah. So continuing on with that, the Torah says, one second. The Torah commands us regarding mitzvahs, v'chai b'hem. We should live by them. We should draw life from them. There's only 3 mitzvahs that a person is obligated to give up his life for, okay? And Puruvu is not one of them. What does that mean? That you're not fulfilling Hashem's will if you're becoming sick over the mitzvah of Puruvu. So therefore, whenever there exists a situation that the fulfillment of this mitzvah can potentially cause risk, whether it's in a physical sense, the psychological well-being of either the husband, the wife, an existing child, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, then a shiloh is asked from their personal row. Now, some situations are pretty clear-cut. Like if a woman had a C-section, it'll be a sakana for her to get pregnant right away. So she has to have a break. Medically, it'll be dangerous, right? So some of these situations are pretty clear-cut. Or if a woman is suffering from postpartum depression. So, and then there's also a lot of situations that's not so clear, and discussing it with a Rav, you get, plan is put out, you get your clearance, and that is you fulfilling the mitzvah to the highest level according to Torah still, because when you speak to a Rav, that becomes your lechatchila, that becomes your mitzvah. Sometimes it's also wise to just consult with a mashpia, because sometimes it's about perspective. And sometimes we need that in order to help us gain perspective to how to present the shaila. Sometimes a woman is not really looking for the heter, but maybe she's just looking for practical tips on how to, to figure things out. A lot of times people also have the misconception of their inability to have a large family. And really it's a myth to think that someone has to manage all the time, but realistic day-to-day life, it's not realistic to be always managing all the time, okay? And to have everything in perfect control. Removing that mental block really enables us to have the more realistic expectations and realize that sometimes life situations, there will be ups and downs. And there are times that life will be more chaotic and sometimes on a cruise, but that's normal. But just as it's, just like it's unhealthy, when someone is getting a job promotion or a new job, they know life is going to be chaotic until they learn the new steps. So the same thing, Baruch Hashem, when a blessing comes into our life, a new child, there takes time for the new equilibrium to get into that family. It takes 9 months, to get there with everything. And that's with the emotionally, that's with the weight gain, with everything. It took you 9 months to get to where you are. It can take 9 months to get back to that new normal. And feeling the need to get back into things as fast as possible is not realistic. Getting back to my body right away, that's also not realistic. Your body is post-miracle. Nobody wants to go back in time without a miracle. Your body's post-miracle, right? It's just about perspective. So especially today, in the world of social media, we have this picture perfect scenes embedded in our minds of what we see, of what people portray to the outside. No matter what a person is going through, whatever they're showing you is what their best is. What they're posting, that's their picture perfect. Okay, so just a little bit, we were talking about the mitzvah, we were talking about the exceptional of the mitzvah, and historical background of this whole thing is having a positive perspective on this mitzvah really helps us overcome a lot of the challenges involved in raising a large family. And once we view this as important, then we have time for it, okay? So historically, infant mortality was very, very high because of diseases and famine and hunger and war, the pogroms and all that. So the idea of birth control was not even considered because Yidden innately felt the personal responsibility to perpetuate the Jewish nation. We see that clearly from Mitzrayim when they were enslaved. They still continue with all the decrees from Pare. They still had as many children as they were able to, and the women were Meiser Nefesh to do that. And the children that were born in that time, that's who Hashem called his Tzavais Hashem. Those were the children that were able to recognize Hashem first by the Yam Suf. And when they came to the Mishkan, And the women brought those mirrors that they used to beautify themselves with, and then go to their husband and flirt with their husband, with kind of like flirt with the mirror, like, oh, do you think I'm prettier or she's prettier, and that kind of thing. Those were the mirrors that when they brought to Moshe was a little bit uncomfortable to use this for the Mishkan, but Hashem said, no, Chavivim alai, that these are most precious to me. So much so that the Kohen Gadol, the Kohanim and the Levim couldn't start their Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash and the Mishkan before they washed their hands in the kiyar, with the kiyar, the basin that was used with those mirrors. So those were very special to Hashem, and this all represented of being Meiser Nefesh to have these children. But going back to what we were saying, because life circumstances, Baruch Hashem, change, we don't have those pogroms and wars and hunger and all that. And Baruch Hashem, human survival is not being threatened, and it's caused modern society, it doesn't view each individual child as a wow thing. Back in the day, they did have big families, but Nebuch, unfortunately, many of them bury their young. So this also coincided in the introduction to the feminist movement, which began to advocate, the promoting successful careers out of the home, and that should be the primary focus in the woman's life. So from this perspective, having babies and having a family is really an obstacle to reach their goal. At the same time, the pharmaceutical companies began to invest a lot of money and energy in creating birth control options to be accessible to all. So this was making it, considering family planning, just like a lucrative choice to an average woman. So this shift in perspective of having children obviously affects the Yidden as well. So the first generation after the Holocaust, we felt the innate kind of like the responsibility, so to speak, to replenish mankind. The second generation, third generation, we don't feel that as direct as much. So that's kind of where that shift took. Take a quick break. We're going to watch a little clip of what the Rebbe says about Peru, and then we'll go on to continue on with the next topic.
Okay, I'm going to show my phone.
No problem.
Yes, sorry about that.
That's fine.
Yes, the word literally. The soul is literally a piece of Hashem. Hashem is surely closeness to the time that is best for the father and the mother. The most important, the best time for the child to be born.
I love the Rebbe's sense of humor there.
Every additional child is a blessing for the mother and the father, for the grandfather and the grandmother, and for all the children who are already in the home. When they're joined by another brother or another sister, and the child is a blessing for the entire Jewish people, wherever they may be. financial challenges, cosmetic concerns, marital issues, family planning. Available on DVD.
There's so many sichos that the Rebbe spoke about this, but you really hear in the Rebbe's voice, the Rebbe's passion. The Rebbe really, like the Rebbe gets emotional when he talks about it. Okay. By the way, you could send that video.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So now we're just going to go through labor delivery, kind of, just not step by step, but just different things that come up in there. So when it comes to labor and childbirth, the Rebbe encouraged to have Sheremilas in the room where the woman gives birth, if possible, even before she enters that room. Before you're entering the room, you could just put it on. They can't tell you, okay, we're going to room 4, and your husband could just, go ahead, or, if not, it's fine. It's not, if it's possible, if someone's giving birth at home, I guess the second they would go into labor maybe, but it doesn't, if possible, great. If not, the woman can have it also with her, let's say in her tichel, when she's in labor, once she's, settled in, she wants to keep one with her. And then we're going to talk about what point during labor does a woman become nida. So there's definitely, by the time that time comes, hopefully you'll have a Rav that you feel comfortable with. And there's a lot of different components on how to answer that question, because different things happen. First birth, second birth, slower, faster, and things like that. For the most part, if a woman is about 4 or 5 centimeters and already in active labor, that's one indication that she could be, obviously she's slow blood. If she's 4 or 5 centimeters and she's in active labor, if she needs assistance, now if there's no one else around, then she needs assistance to walk, then her husband is there. But meaning that she's ready to deliver, then she's usually nida by then. If she says that she's ready to give birth, like she asked for the bed and is ready to give birth, you'll ask your personal Rav, Mirz Hashem, when the time comes, in your 8th month, you'll have a list of questions. How does it work for Shabbos? Do we call a taxi? Is it better to call an Uber? If you're driving yourself, you don't turn off the car. There's a whole bunch of different things that the Rav will guide you at that time. The same for home birth, exactly. It doesn't matter where you're giving birth. What are you allowed to do? What is the husband allowed to do? And things like that. There's, once a woman is in labor, she is considered a chayla b'sakana, someone that's sick and in danger. So there's a lot of halachas that are allowed when it comes to Shabbos and Yom Tov. More Shabbos is stricter, obviously, that are allowed because she falls into that category, okay? So there's also the question of fasting. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Also having the husband present in the room during delivery is considered obviously the opposite of tznius. And it also says a woman should never be undignified in front of her husband. And the words that is with accompanies that is that he might see something on her that is displeasing, and then that can affect the relationship. So not even from a halachic perspective, from a Jewish perspective, not that we need from the outside to prove that, but you see that it can affect a relationship when a husband sees wife in that manner. Now, saying this carefully, if you a woman should always have the support that she needs. Historically, looking through Tanakh, it was always the description of the miyaldes that were present at birth. It was never a husband. All through the ages, it was women supporting women at birth. Think of when you had your period. You complain to your sisters, to your mother, to your friends about your cramps, about how you're feeling. Your husband is your best friend. That's amazing. That's wonderful. They just understand things just a little bit different. Okay? That's just the way Hashem created us. So the support that a woman can give support to a laboring woman is definitely different than the support a husband can give. Okay. Now, thinking, how can I survive? So not okay, I don't want to use their survive. How can I go through labor and birth without my husband's support? Support looks different. Support can look different in so many different, can be translated in so many different ways. It's not only the physical touch that we're talking about, that's your support. It could be your husband's calming voice, that can be your anchor. It can be, so again, there's lots and lots of different ways that your husband can be there for support, okay? So in order for the woman to achieve really the full relaxation that is necessary for a smooth childbirth, it's more beneficial to have a woman pregnant, to have a woman present. Well, yeah, it does start with the pregnancy. But even a step before that, being your own advocate is so important. Doing all the preparing, the learning till your birth is so important, because especially when it comes to your first Emir Hashem, even as much as you prepare, it's still the first time you're experiencing things. Okay. Now let's go back to having your period. You could have heard about it that first time you had your period, it could have been overwhelming, but you knew what to expect, so it made it a little bit easier. Had you not known about it, it's frightening. So with birth, when it's your whole body being involved in this, the more you learn about it, the more you prepare, the better prepared you are, at least in your mind. So when something is happening, or the doctor says something, the midwife says something, or your doula says something, oh, I remember reading about that. Oh, I know what she's talking about. Oh, I know what that term is. So it's not, you're not walking into, into a Chinese, I don't know, well, not Chinese, but I'm saying, you're not walking into something completely a foreign language to you, okay? So again, going back to about the husband in the room, the Rebbe was very, very strong about it, and comes from it actually not to have the husband in the room at the birth, comes from actually from halacha. It's not just a Chassidus thing, but it actually stems from halacha. But also knowing that it's a very, very delicate time. It's a delicate time that a baby is coming into the world. Bring down a neshama, right? And it's a spiritual thing that's happening. Now, the woman is busy fully in a physical sense with what's going on. She can't be in the right mind to take care of and think about the spiritual side of it. Even if she's listening to her nagunim, even if she's whatever it is, if that's what's common or whatever it is, her husband's job is to take care of the spiritual parts. Let him be there to protect the situation. There's certain kapitlach that the Tzemach Tzedek, when the Maharash was being born, it was close to Pesach. They had just bought a new house, and the Rebbetzin was giving birth. They had a new house where they were building the matzah. They were preparing the matzahs for Pesach there. So it was an empty house just with a table where they finished doing the matzah. He was born close to Pesach. So they set up a bed, and that's where the Rebbetzin was giving birth. And the Tzemach Tzedek instructed all his children to say certain kapitlach. Now, we know that if Tzemach Tzedek chose these specific kapitlach, they must have a significance. So those are the ones that the husband traditionally says during the labor. So your husband has a job. It's not that he's not standing by your side, rubbing your hand, rubbing your arm. He's actually taking on a significant job that's helping protect the situation, okay? Because as physical as it is, the neshama is coming down, and we want it to be born with kedusha and purity. So you're doing all the physical, and let him take care of the rest. When the Rebbe spoke about the father being in the room, the Rebbe spoke about a lot of things when it came to birth, about not publicizing until the 5th month. Of course, that does not include, telling your support circle, your mother, your parents, your support circle, if you need help beforehand, that does not include them. If you need help, support, whether it's taking care of the kids or keeping yourself nourished or whatever it is, that does not include that. About sonograms, the Rebbe said not to have routine sonograms. If there's a reason for that sonogram and the doctor is suggesting it for a certain reason, ask the reason. I like to say that the doctors are like caterers. You don't have to be their buffet. I know that's a little bit of very, but really they can offer it every single appointment. But understanding why there's a need for that, then we know why we need it. Okay. The Rebbe also spoke about having cervical checks for no reason. Everything disrupting the baby from a spiritual sense and from a physical sense, let nature take its course, okay? So once your nida, all harchakas apply, and keeping in mind when you're packing your bag for the hospital or when you're putting things aside, planning for at home, plan ahead. You know you're going to be nida. So plan what you want as your head covering. Plan if you're in the hospital and you want to wear your own clothing when you're laboring or delivering. You can. It just has to be something that's loose and easy access if the doctor needs anything. There's different hospital gowns that they have a more tznius style. You could plan ahead and what you're wearing after birth. All those things you can plan ahead. Talking about the cervical checks, just from a halachic perspective, to remember that usually when a woman is having her first baby, the cervix is being dilated at the time during labor. But in subsequent birth, it can happen a few weeks before. So the woman can be a few centimeters dilated a few weeks before birth. So if she's having a cervical check, that can make her nida. Not for sure, it can. So in a subsequent birth, that's a good question also to ask the Rav. Having a cervical check past the 8th month, will that put me in nida? Just to keep in mind, cervical check tells you nothing. It just tells you that you're open and you're going to have a baby soon. So a woman could be open 5 centimeters and give birth literally a half hour later, or she can be open 5 and give birth, I don't want to say how many hours later, but it's not really giving you much. It's just telling you you're open. Really, I know I'm in labor. Let's figure out how to progress this. I don't know who just asked that. Why? It's a good question. If you ask a doctor why it needs to be done now, it's not giving you, it's telling you what's happening right now. But it's not an indication what's happening in 5 minutes. Like when you're in your 9th month or you're overdue and someone's like, oh, you're still home? But then labor could have happened in 5 seconds and then you had your baby a few hours later. But I just spoke to her. It's telling you what's happening right now. It's not an indication of what, you know what I mean? Another thing that's a halachic question is membrane stripping, which is basically the doctor or the midwife putting her fingers, kind of stripping away I'm seeing faces. It's basically kind of separating a little bit of the sac from the cervix, and that can make you nida. The reason why it's done is sometimes that can help if a woman is overdue and she's trying to get something, labor started. That can help. Sometimes it takes 2-3 tries.
Wait, you could do it more than one, remember?
Today, tomorrow, the next day.
Once it's done, it's not done?
No, because it's still intact. You're just kind of separating a little. That kind of like by an egg, that white, not the shell, but that white, that's the membrane. So you could peel it a little bit, then there's more to peel and more to peel. Kind of like that. So that's a question also for a Rav, if that's making you nida. Also an induction, obviously, if it's medically needed, that's a different story. But just because someone is sick of being pregnant or anything like that, besides from a medical perspective, that it could lead to other unnecessary interventions, which we obviously don't want for ourselves as a person and in Mitzvahs of Ibrahim for a future pregnancy. But we're not the ones that choose our baby's birthdays. Hashem does. So having, induction done just because, a medical induction, not talking about a natural induction. That's very different, meaning like there's so many different ways that you can try to start an induction at home. I'm talking about an in-hospital induction. That's obviously more medical. Okay, moving on. After a boy is born, when the father gets the news, he says the bracha hatay v'hametiv. That's a good question. I don't know. I think, yeah. And for a girl, it's, I don't know, I never said the bracha, so.
I know it's in the book.
I think it is. I don't know. I might have to do all my 7 kids again because I'm not sure we did that, but for a girl, when when he hears the news, he says hatay v'hametiv for a boy, and for a girl, when the husband sees her, he says the bracha shechianu. It is beautiful.
Holding the baby, and she saw him, and he said he saw.
Yeah,
I got to see it.
So it's really a special time when the baby is being born. Also says when you start to nurse, you start on your left, it's closer to the heart. The Rebbe actually says that nursing is the ideal way of feeding a baby. Obviously, a healthy mommy, a healthy baby, a fed baby, a growing baby is what is best. So if that doesn't work for whatever reason, there shouldn't be any guilt involved. Sanity is important, and all those things are taken into account. Once the baby is born, the Rebbe mentions being very careful about what the baby is surrounded with and everything that the baby sees. So we put a picture of the Rebbe there, to wash the negavasser for the baby as soon as it's possible, to get tzedakah with the baby. There's a lot going on. Baby is born, and we add a new light. Comes the first Friday night after the baby's born, we add an extra light for the baby. It's a huge deal. Along with that, the mother adds another light by Shabbos candles. Literally a new light came into the world. No, well, you probably need a night light anyways, but yeah. It's weird. I remember, I don't know about you, but I feel like I slept with the light, like didn't the first, I don't know why.
There's diapers and
There's everything, but it's Baruch Hashem. There's a huge deal going on. A huge light just came into the world, a huge miracle. Along with that comes Nida. What better way to keep Hashem, to say thank you to Hashem by keeping the laws that he outlined for us. It's hard. It is. But this is our way to say thank you to Hashem, okay? And that's in a nutshell, really. It's not an easy mitzvah, but really, after a woman has a baby, she needs a lot of support. The first thing on her mind is probably not the hug and kiss from her husband, although that might be nice. But again, this is our way to say thank you to Hashem. But she needs a lot of support. Your husband is there to be your support. You need a shower, he can hold a baby. Maybe that's what you need. You need a shower, you need a nice meal, you need someone to help with the other kids, you need someone to do the laundry. That's the way he can be there for you. You're hormonal. It's not just about the hug and the kiss that you need. You need so much more of that cushioning, so to speak, but not just necessarily in that physical sense, but in so many other physical ways. Someone there to pick up the dirty Pampers that are on the floor from the middle of the night. This is his way of being part of it. This is a way of bonding with you and the baby. This is his way of saying thank you. This is your time to rest, to rest, to rest. Yes. And did I say rest? I like to say the 3-week rule. The first, I know, I have to practice what I preach. But the 3-week rule, the first week in the bed, the second week on the bed, the third week near the bed. After that, we can talk. You feel great and you want to go for a walk? Go where nobody sees you. Go where no one's seeing you. Unless you absolutely have to meet your child by the bus, or for some reason it's only you, I don't know why, that can go to the grocery store to get that milk. You want fresh air, open up the window. You're going to get your fresh air that way also. But if you feel if you feel good, take a walk during the day when no one's out. I don't know, not really during the day when no one's out, because someone's always out, but not on Kingston Avenue. You're feeling good, but then you're gonna pay, you might just pay for it later. I know they say sleep when the baby sleeps. Try that. And then sometimes when the baby sleeps, you have to make the choice. Am I going to go to sleep? Am I going to eat? Am I going to go to the bathroom? Am I going to take a shower? Like which one? But it doesn't always work, sleep when the baby sleeps, because you can't, you can't cook when the baby, cook when the baby cooks, and laundry when the baby laundry. That doesn't work. But definitely rest as much as you can.
Give that 3 weeks. Everyone needs to hear it.
On the bed, in the bed, near the bed.
Perfect. What if you call friends?
Yeah, one friend at a time, once a day.
Yes.
Sorry, that's the only way it's
I
gonna
am
work.
the biggest extrovert you probably have ever met, and I do.
Okay, it takes a toll on you,
Yes.
and it not in a bad way. Even if you had a short labor, your body went through a marathon in 3 hours instead of, you know what I mean? No, I'm not saying it's better. When Hashem chose what kind of birth you're having, there's no way to know. But when you're exercising, right, and you want to burn, let's say, I don't know, 1,000 calories, some people can do it in 20 minutes, and some people, it's not a matter of how long it's taking you, but you can either walk that mile or run that mile. Hashem chose what kind of birth you're going to have. But your body still has to recover from that. Fast and furious and prolonged, you know what I mean? It's different. Every single birth is different. Every baby is different. Every woman's different. But the recovery, the prescription of it needs to be the same. Exactly. Just to, do you have a paper plate? I don't know if you've ever seen a placenta, but here, could you pass me that clock? That's fine. I'll do that clock. If you've ever seen a placenta, it's about this size, okay? The wound is this size in the inside of your uterus. Imagine wearing that wound outside. You would rest, and not go out, even if you're an extrovert, right? You would have one friend at a time to bring you something that you like. And sometimes when that friend comes over, you'll hand her the baby and say, I need to sleep. You're such a good friend. Thank you for coming. But that's what it is. Imagine we wore our wound outside, right? That's what it is. Thank you. That's our prop. That was the first one. That was our second one. Okay. Where are we up to? Okay. There's so much emphasis on the labor, but there's a lot happening right after. Okay. You're a mommy, enjoy basking in that moment, and that new mommy needs to sleep. So whatever needs to be brought to you, that's fine. Kiddush, sit on the couch. Somehow the negavasa, that's in your room could be brought to the dining room, and that's where you're going to wash for your hamaitzi. That's fine. It's not, you don't have to, you want to get, for myself, when I'm preparing for my birth, I'm buying myself a new tichel because I know this is what I'm going to be wearing for a while. So that's my new pretty thing. And you know what I mean? But you don't have to do anything more than that. Okay. As soon as you start acting like you didn't just give birth, everybody tends to forget around you. So actually the Shiramayas, I didn't know this, but the Rebbe actually designed the Shiramayas. There's around the Shiramayas, there's the words of from the Zohar, from Uziel Hamalach, that's a protection for the baby, who spoke about the Tehillim. And
when do you start with the Shiramayas?
The Rebbe says, if possible, before the woman even enters the room that she's giving birth in. As soon as you get there.
Pregnancy?
That I've never heard. But it's possible.
There's a few home birthers here who are wondering when they should put it on their house.
Have it in your house. That's fine. I don't know. I never heard about hanging it up beforehand. Did you hear differently?
I was told by the men.
Okay.
Because I'm living in the house, so like I can put flavor in it.
That yeah.
I don't know.
When you're at home, where do you hang it up in the front entrance in a specific room? How do you do it?
So I don't know if it's termed tonight, but I do it in my room because that's where I give birth, and I do it in the front.
You can do it wherever you want. You can put it all over.
Or one, like
in the front door
Yeah.
and at the bedroom, and then you'll have one on the baby's bassinet. After you'll go to mikvah, you'll put that one for the bassinet under the baby's crib, under the mattress, kind of, because the words of Hashem are exposed.
Usually it's the rooms that the baby's gonna be wants to go into.
Right.
Okay. Like the main room, like I think I have it on my front door and my bedroom.
And then a lot of people end up having it on the baby's car seat or just wrapped in the blanket. You could have it wherever it is. I mean, we have a mezuzah on every single door, but we only make a bracha on the one of the house, but we do it. The words of Hashem is on the Sheremilas. So we're not supposed to have holy things, like if there's a siddur in the room, in the bedroom where you're having intimacy, it's supposed to be tucked away. So it's the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long do you keep it up for?
I don't know. I never officially took them down. It just,
I know, I never.
yeah, it just,
You just have the next baby.
yeah, unless, the one in the front door gets weathered away from the sun or whatever, and then,
You switch it. Yeah.
Some people just have on their front door.
yeah,
Yeah.
Your youngest is how old?
it's protection. I don't know.
I've never thought to take them off.
I don't know, mine's been on for my last baby and just continued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there an immune time on the front door?
I guess when you paint the front door, I don't know. There's no answer on that.
During the room you deliver, do you like cover it or anything for like stages when you're not sneezing while you're giving birth?
I didn't hear that.
Okay,
Like there's questions like, can I listen to Nugunim if I'm not really tznius?
right.
You're listening it, if that's what's getting you to, if that's what's getting you to your zone that where you need to be, then do that. If it's you're doing it because someone told you to do it and you're just making you nervous, then don't listen to it. Do what you need to do. There's definitely different halachas when if you're having one on you, you can easily tuck it into your techel. There's actually different halachas, like when a woman is nursing and there's a man in the room that's davening, she has to be careful. But if it's just amongst women who are davening, you're allowed to daven like that. The halachas are a little bit different, so no problem. Okay. So talking a little bit about packing the bag, we said, remember, pack things that you're going to need. If you want to wear your specific night shirt or whatever it is that you feel more comfortable until you have to give birth, then plan ahead. Think of the time of the year. If it's Hanukkah time, what are you doing about Hanukkah candles? If you might be there on Shabbos, think about that. If it's Pesach, like the same way you're going to be planning who's taking care of your kids at home, what you're leaving behind, and going to the hospital, all those things.
Even if you don't pack it, then you should have
100%. Someone's like, what are you doing with your kids? I'm like, a home birth doesn't mean a family event.
Yeah.
The same way you have to plan ahead what you're doing with your kids if you're going to the
And
hospital.
what you want to wear.
Exactly, all those things, for sure. I remember my first home birth. I called my mother, it was right before Shabbos, to tell her that I was in labor, and she came over, and then she doesn't see me leaving. She goes, and she's sitting, and she goes, oh, I forgot you're staying home. It was just very funny. She came running over because she thought it was like right before Shabbos. She lit candles and came over. Whatever, it was very funny. There's a lot of things that you could find on Sichas online, on Sichas in English. You can find it online or buy it in a book. A nice thing, another thing, right after the baby, you should notify the Rebbe that you had a baby. We asked for brachas along the pregnancy, and the Rebbe has mentioned multiple of times, don't only come to me when you have your problems, share the good news also. So remember, you have your baby. Before you make that announcement, there's a number that you can actually just text to the IL and they could send in to the Rebbe, yeah.
About pregnancy, I read it, there's a minhag to only notify the Rebbe in like the third month.
Fourth. I actually found that very interesting the first time I read it because
Maybe repeat the question.
yes, the question was about notifying the Rebbe about a pregnancy. So in Minhag Chabad, in the Minhagim, I forgot what book it was called, the way I'm quoting it. Sefer Minhagim, I think it was, yeah. So the Rebbe says not to publicize the pregnancy until the 5th month, but that does not, we said it doesn't include parents, because why hold back a simcha from them? And that's from the beginning of the 3rd month, or if you need earlier, that's fine. But Chassidim didn't tell the Rebbe until their 4th month.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you can't go to the aisle.
That doesn't mean you, yeah.
I know, I just heard that.
Well,
that's
fourth
being
month means
misunderstood.
3 months and a day. That means 1 day into your second trimester.
And for the mother, 2 months to 1 day.
Some people tell them, you know, like, I know when Kallahs call me, when can I tell my mother? I'm like, there's a nice idea of, unless you have to, it's a nice feeling of having this little secret between you and your husband for a week or two before, you know, someone else is in that secret. And I remember the Kallah afterwards, she was like, oh, that was so nice. It was just us that knew about it. And then there's no rule on that, but whatever you and your husband are comfortable with. Remembering when you're in labor, Hashem has a plan, but when it comes to it, you are in charge of your birth. This is actually a very interesting exercise. I'm not going to do it right now, but I've done this with women. I asked them to draw their birth, just a picture of their birth. And it was fascinating to see that different women drew different things. None of us were artists. One woman drew a picture of the hospital bed and the woman took up the whole picture, literally. Another one, there was the doctor, the machines, and then you saw her in the little, it was just the perspective of who's running the show here, who is in charge, the woman or not? Is it everyone just telling her what to do? And, you know, things like that. There is a concept of, in the medical world, of cultural diversity. They have to respect when, you know, you have different, when they're, let's say they're offering a sonogram, they have to respect when you say, you know, I have to ask my rabbi about this, or, you know, most of us, especially in Kren Heights, the providers that we're using are very familiar about the sonograms and things like that. Okay, talking about this is pregnancy, postpartum, or whenever it is, recognizing the changes in you emotionally. During pregnancy, we know about, we hear a lot about postpartum depression, but those downer feelings can also even start during pregnancy. So noticing those changes in you. If you see something is happening, whether it's a day or after a week, recognize that and speak it out, whether it's to your husband or a friend. I'm noticing these feelings are not going away. Just keeping on tabs on that. That's the first line of support, the first step to take, that things don't get progress further than that. Okay.
Is there a way to prepare that, like vitamins or anything to help with that postpartum?
I say from the answer is no. It can happen to anyone at any time of your life. Postpartum is not just the immediate days or weeks afterwards. Postpartum can happen even a year later. Postpartum depression, because you're postpartum.
There's a lot of hormones that like.
There's a lot of shift of hormones. What? So it is hormones, and there is ways, but to prevent it, not always.
Yeah, it
But-
doesn't help, but.
Right. Once you recognize the signs of something, there's a shift there, then. But eating properly, getting the adequate support, knowing what you need.
Did you say sleep?
Sleep, exactly. All those things are important, okay? We mentioned fasting, whether we're talking about being pregnant or when you're nursing or right after. If you ask a doctor, they'll tell you don't fast. Even if it's a from doctor, they're not there to paskin, okay? Understanding, even if the doctor says, yes, the from doctor, I know, I understand, whatever, I'm telling you not to fast. He's a medical person at the end of the day, and his job is not to paskin. You could ask him, in general, this is your outlook. Please tell me, for me specifically, tell me the details that are pertaining to me in particular, why you think it's not a good idea for me to fast. Take those details to the Rav, and then the Rav will paskin. Okay, the Rav, I thought this was adorable. I was teaching one of my Kallahs, And I always tell my colleagues, there's 3 things you're going to hear me say over and over and over. If you remember these, we did a good job. 1, call a Rav. 1, don't look. I don't know how much, and don't do extra bedikas if you don't have to. Those are 3 things that will come out of your ears. If you heard anything, that's what we did. So one day she comes to class and she goes, I don't know if this is appropriate or not. I'm like, okay. She's like, I finally called the Rav and he's my new BFF. Is that appropriate? I'm like, that's great. That's all we needed to hear. But
I just got feedback from someone who said one of the most incredible accomplishments of the Chassidus is that you got us to not have a fear of calling a Rav.
it's really not
And this is someone
scary.
who's single, like not have a fear of calling a
I
Rav.
think the biggest gift you can give to your child in Mirz Hashem is them hearing that you're calling a Rav. And they have a question. I once messaged, it was Rabbi Gorelik. My son asked me a question. He was working by Kaparis and he found money on the floor. So what he was just learning in El Matthias, according to what he learned, is he's allowed to have it, but he wasn't sure. I said, well, we called Rav and asked. So I messaged the Rav. I said, is now a good time? My 11-year-old has a question. He's like, for an 11-year-old, I always have the time. And it was adorable that he sat and chatted with him, asking him first, what he's learning in school and this and that, making him feel comfortable. So when you're actually going to a Rav and he asks you, so how was your day and all that, he's just trying to make you feel more comfortable. That's, it's the same exact thing, but it's really the greatest gift. I want to get used to asking the smaller questions, the easier questions. It's easier to ask later on. But in general, the more you prepare, the more you learn, the better it is for you. Knowledge is power. When should you hire a doula? As early as possible. You're getting to know your doula as a person, a better bond, and there's so much strong evidence how the benefits of a doula. Medically, the outcomes are better, the rates of episiotomy are lower, the rates of C-section are lower, the rates of the hours in labor are lower. When you have the right support, everything is easier. Again, Hashem has a plan.
Sometimes.
Yes, they can. A lot of it is also based on insurance. So that's a hard one. But when choosing a provider, it's not because my sister, my friend, my neighbor did this. You should have a list of questions and interview and see what works for you. Yes, it might be a little bit inconvenient to go and travel for an appointment, but this is about you. They're getting to know you as a person, and the more that you get to know them and they get to know you, the more the signs, if something is off, we're talking about postpartum depression, the more they'll recognize that. They'll see it when you give birth. They'll see it in the postpartum visit. The first time you're going to the pediatrician, all those, they're looking out for signs for postpartum depression. But again, educate yourself the best as possible.
Wait, if it's caught faster, better? Is it better?
Yeah.
What?
The faster you catch it, like in the early.
Of course, anything, when something is going off, the earlier you catch it, it doesn't get worse. The earlier you catch it, the better the outcome is, because you can get the help that you need, the support that you need. Yeah.
I don't mean to contradict, but I think it could get worse.
What could get worse?
The postpartum depression.
If it's not caught on time? I didn't hear, what do you mean?
Yeah, because someone.
Oh, no, so then you're agreeing. I think there's a miscommunication. What the question was, could it get worse? In general,
Of
the
course.
answer is yes.
But it could get worse, but with the proper support,
And catching it earlier.
yes, the earlier you catch it, sorry, you're right. Things could get worse before they get better, but if you have the proper support, you won't feel that you completely derailed. You'll feel at least you're being held and you have what you need while that happens. No problem. Okay, okay, so we've mentioned that there's different questions that you'll be asking around. But we spoke about the cervical checks, going into labor, whether it's in the house, in the cervical checks from the 8th month and on, not the first baby, but after that, if the doctor needs to. Again, there's not really a reason to check in your 8th month. You can have a baby with no cervical checks at all,
Period. The entire
period,
time.
before, during, and after. Then 100% fine. But
I'm pretty sure Judy Rivner spoke about it for us a bit. So you can go on our YouTube channel and check out that talk.
different questions you can ask a Rav going into labor on Shabbos or in the hospital. In going into labor, whether you're going to the hospital or you're staying home, how does it work with Shabbos? We said at what point during labor are you nida? Talking about the 6-week postpartum visit, there's nothing medical about that 6-week visit. It's, I don't know how to say this, but it's an insurance thing and it's an American thing. This 6-week visit. It's just, there's some places in the world that there's no 6-week visit and they have a visit 2 days postpartum, 2 weeks postpartum, 3 months postpartum, because that's the way their insurance works. And that's how the maternal care is. By us, you have a baby, you're discharged. And then by 6 weeks, you should be able to go into the, get out of the house and go to your doctor. And that's the way insurance works. So there's no big 6-week mark. That confusion happens and a lot of pressure is put on. Women think that because of that 6-week mark, that means I'm supposed to be clean. I'm supposed to be able to go to the mikveh around that. And it causes a lot of pressure. It's normal to bleed, to get to mikveh anywhere between 4 weeks to 12 weeks. That range is completely normal. That being said, first of all, ways to get to mikveh faster is rest, rest, rest. Drink. Red raspberry leaf teas are great. Rest. Stay in your pajamas. Keep the lights closed. Rest. Turn on the lights. No, really, when your apartment is going to be a little bit more dimmed, you're gonna automatically rest. Even if turn off your phone, not even on vibrate. Turn it off if you're sleeping, because that buzz is gonna keep you looking at it. We all learned the hard way. The first baby suddenly, I feel great, and then the next day you can't even lift the spoon to your mouth. Or you're trying to get to mikveh, it's not happening. And the second one, okay, I think I need to rest. Remember that size of that paper plate? Rest. Then keeping yourself hydrated, having healthy snacks, all those things definitely make a difference. That time that you're being nida is long. It is. Plan ahead. Prepare and find ways that you'll be able to connect as a couple in a non-physical way. Whether when you're feeling well enough, maybe in the evening when it's a little bit dark outside, that's when you can go for a little walk with your husband so you can get some fresh air. You might need to 4 weeks in, exactly. Or if you're up to it, a board game or whatever. Find ways that you could connect as a couple. And sometimes it's just spending time quiet in the dining room, in the living room together, okay? But again, this is the time that the focus should be on you. Actually, I remember hearing this, reading this, I don't remember in what context it was, hearing it or reading it or whatever it was, but magically Hashem also changes the hormones in the man. He's not craving intimacy the way he usually does. It's possible for him, very, very possible for him to abstain for that long, okay? So it's normal, it's healthy, and Hashem created us that way, and you find ways to connect as a couple, as a family, okay? Another minhag is that the first outing that the mother goes out on should be something of a davar kedusha. She's going to shul, she's either here Baruch Hu or kedusha. Now, if you need to go to the doctor and you didn't manage to get to to shul, that's okay. If you have a bris, you could hear the kedusha in shul. There's actually some communities that the custom is that the mother doesn't even go to the bris.
So it is that way.
Yeah.
It was so interesting. My friend, she gave birth to a boy. I was like, where is she? They're like, she just But
That's-
the Spartans only been house for 30 days.
Actually interesting, Shevet Levi, when the Yidden were counted, they were all counted from age 20 and older. Shevet Levi was counted from younger, from birth. But the Moshe went around the houses and he stood outside the door, and there was a baskal that came out and said how many Levium were in that. Because if there was a mother that had given birth within 30 days, she doesn't come out of the house. So there was a baskal that said in the outside how many Levium were in there. So there's definitely a source in the Torah of, of the 30 days. Okay. Now, another thing, naming the baby. You just brought a child into this world. It's a beautiful thing, a holy thing, a Kedusha thing. There's such a value in just being that. There's a special Ruach HaKodesh that the parents that gave birth to that child have when it comes to naming the baby. It's not the grandmother, the aunt, this, that, whatever. A lot of people like to meddle, but not ultimately, it is the Ruach HaKodesh that the parents get when it comes to baby naming. For a girl, we try to name the baby at the first opportunity. Some people have in some circles, they have the minhag that's the first Shabbos or whatever it is. If you gave birth on Shabbos an hour before mincha and you don't have a name, it's okay. You can wait till Monday. It's not, but we wait, we do it the first opportunity. When it comes to the birth certificate, there are ways to delay if you don't want to write down the baby's name. It's okay if you have to, but at least don't say the name out loud. So if you need to say it, but don't call the baby to that name, there are ways that you could adjust it afterwards. When it comes to the Eis B'Sefer Torah, writing a letter to the Sefer Torah that the Rebbe spoke about, you could actually send in for a letter to the Sefer Torah and add the name in later. The Rebbe also said to enroll the children into Tzvais Hashem. That was the army that the Rebbe set up, what we're trying to do is surround the baby with Davar Shebekdusha. The Rebbe spoke a lot about surrounding the baby also with kosher images. By a girl, we have a kiddush, and this is literally to give thanks to Hashem for the miracle that he gave for us. Now, when a child is born, we give the parents a bracha, l'tara l'chuppah l'maisim tovim. In other circles, actually, in some circles, they just say chuppah l'maisim tovim, not l'tara, but the Rebbe was very into educating his women, and we say l'tara l'chuppah l'maisim tovim. And it's actually interesting because sometimes there is an idea of, they say that having a kiddush is a skula for a shidduch because we're saying l'tayra l'chuppah l'maisim tovim. And I know I've heard this concept before of older women that have not found their shidduch yet had a kiddush, so people can re-bless them, or maybe they didn't have a kiddush when they were younger, but they had it when they were older as a skula to get married because people are benching them. L'tayra l'chuppah l'maisim tovim.
We at Xidus, we posted.
That's beautiful. That's so nice.
Doesn't always work right away.
Doesn't always work right away.
Nothing ever. I'm saying
Correct.
it says
No magic.
Yeshua Hashem Keharifayin.
Yes.
Sometimes, for a boy, we have a Shalom Zachar. It's on the Friday night. It doesn't matter if the baby is there or not. Like the mother could still be in the hospital with the baby, but you still have a Shalom Zachar. By the Seder, we don't eat after Afikaiman, but you still have a Shalom Zachar without food. But Yom Kippur is also a time when we don't have food, but for some reason, then you don't have Shalom Zachar. I would imagine because you're just saying tell him, but you should be busy with that.
Did you make up a kiddush for a boy who would have had like a Shalom Zachar?
I don't think so, because the idea of a kiddush and a Shalom Zachar is I don't know, is different.
When you're talking about Pesach and Yom Kippur, you're talking about when it falls on Shabbos?
Yeah.
Typically Friday night?
Yeah. The Shalom Zachar is the first Friday night. So
Even if you had Pesach in between, but then Kol Hamoed was Friday night, then you would do them, like right.
the first Friday night after the baby's born is a Shalom Zachar. He's born an hour before Shabbos is a Shalom Zachar. The idea of chickpeas and beer, I think, is just to get them to come out of their house.
Yeah.
It could be maybe the chickpeas has to do with something being ground, but I don't know. I mean, I think I might be making that up, so I'm not sure.
Really?
Okay, then the bris is obviously the first mitzvah that the boy is, well, if the parents are doing it for him, it's really significant. We do it on time, obviously, unless there's a medical reason. And I mentioned before that if there's a reason why it needs to be pushed off, the 8th day becomes sort of like the 8th day. The significance of the 8th day becomes the day the baby is having that bris. I'm just gonna mention it. Sometimes mothers become very, very emotional. How can I do this to my child? Putting the baby in pain. There's a lot of times there are choices that us as mothers, as parents make that we know that we might be putting our child either uncomfortable or something painful, but we know it has a tremendous gain and benefit. This is for their spiritual health. It's been being done through, the millennium, always, and even though it might not be pleasant for right now, this is what is bringing them into the covenant of Avraham Avinu. And Hashem says, we say at a bris, with the Mayachayi, this is, with this mitzvah, Hashem is, they're being into Bnei Yisrael for forever. And we just had a baby. If we are a strong, composed, healthy woman that was able to birth a baby into this world, we certainly can take their spiritual health and be that strong, composed woman and, go along with that, obviously. We spoke about the Eis B'Sefer Torah, so Eis Hashem. It's okay to cry. You'll cry when you give birth. I mean, not everyone, but I'm saying some people actually, right when they have their baby, they don't have that connect right away. And that's also normal. That shift of hormones is very strong. And sometimes there's a disconnect before, everyone's saying, oh, it's me, I'm the mommy in the room. And that's normal too. But you might cry when you have, give birth. You might cry by their bris and their upshenish and their bar mitzvah the first time they go to camp. It's all normal. It's part of it. Those are, the song, he cried happy tears in Parshas Vayechi when Yaakov and Yosef, they cried happy tears, whatever. So those are happy tears. It's okay.
Wait, isn't it like after school?
No, you could do it through Twice Hashem. It's not the way when we were kids that you actually go up in promotion and ranks with the Mashiach times and all those things, the mission. But the concept of just signing them up in Twice Hashem, you could. Hachayal starts, I think, from like pre-1A or first grade, but you could sign them up into Twice Hashem. Probably, yeah.
And you just got like a serial number.
Exactly.
In the secretary, yeah, you said it.
In general, when it comes to plan, postpartum, go with the flow. You don't have to, no one says when you have to have your, you have to feel your best, look your best, and when you have to have your life back together. Go with the flow. Don't plan, but don't plan too much because nothing goes as planned. So just take it easy. And remember that as women, we have the Bina Yisera, we have that extra wisdom. There's a famous, we know the concept of Chachmas Nashim Banta Besa. Now it's interesting that the Nashim is in plural, Chachmas Nashim is in plural, Banta Besa is in singular. It takes smart women to build a home. What does that mean? We should be there to support each other. We know the concept of it takes a village. We know everything comes from Torah. This is where it is. Chachmas Nashim Banta Besa. It takes a group of women to support each other, to be there for each other, to lift up each other. It's okay to cry. It's okay to fall apart. We put the pieces back together and we build our homes. Ready for questions? Sure. Now for the favorite parts. Why don't we share the baby's name out loud before the bris or the kiddush? Because the naming actually happens at the Torah. So that's when you're announcing the baby's name. I remember one of my births, the midwife asked me, what's the baby's name? And we didn't know yet, whatever. Finally we knew. And she's like, okay. I said, I'm gonna text it to you. She's like, okay. I said, yeah, the baby naming ceremony, that's when we announce it. She's like, she was totally respectful. That was fine.
But I mean, like options.
Of course, you could discuss it with your husband.
Some people might say that you are like,
No. You're not announcing that this is the baby's name. Just keep in mind, sometimes when the bris is delayed, and it could change, that's besides the point, but if the baby's name is delayed and it went onto the birth certificate and then it went to the insurance card and you're at the doctor's office and they're announcing, okay, this and this, and you're like, okay, this baby doesn't really have a name yet, but it was just announced. That's just something to keep in mind as well. There are times, it doesn't happen that often, but you discuss the name and suddenly something else comes out of the husband's mouth.
Correct.
And
No, but
that's,
we make sure to write it because I have to tell president.
I know
always
that,
write it for him.
right, but Shabbos, that can change.
Yeah.
There's no paper.
It was in my house, so.
I remember at a bris, they announced the baby's name and we asked the mother, what's the baby's name? She's like, I don't know. We're like, what? She goes, we couldn't decide between two names. And I just told my husband, whatever happens, happens. So I don't know the baby's name. I didn't hear what he said. So that was that. Or I know a story of they discussed the name. It was Shabbos. He went to name the baby and he completely forgot the name. Like the name completely left him. And he suddenly had a vision of his aunt that had died in the war, who he had never met, asking, please name after me. And it was a very, very, very unique name. And he named the baby that. And when he came back to the hospital, the new hormonal mommy is like, that's not going to be my daughter's name. Go back for Mincha and add a name. And that's what happened. He went back, added a name, and Baruch Hashem, exactly. So there goes the it's really a spiritual thing, the baby. I mean, I know there is,
Regardless of family.
I know
opinions.
it is hard sometimes when you have a lot of opinions, and yeah, it
It's
is
also a
hard.
message for all of us. We're the mother-in-law. It's not our business.
Exactly.
I do-
Exactly.
I do want to add to that.
Yeah.
That in the process, it's important not to vilify the people who do meddle, because like I've seen firsthand how much pain a mother who just lost her father really wished that this boy would carry the name. And so even though the parents, it's like they need to stand in their rules of Kaddish, also just to know that
For 100%.
like people have feelings. And,
We all have feelings.
yeah.
The new hormonal mommy also has feelings. So does, whoever is having an opinion. And of course, everything needs to be taken into account. But ultimately, it's the parents that have the baby, and they have that Ruach HaKodesh.
Sure. Just to go by it kindly.
No,
People could be like, that's my baby, and I feel like you can do the same thing in 2 weeks.
100%, 100%. And sometimes when the baby naming is happening, look at people's faces. They're so sure, and all of a sudden it's not what they, completely.
Is it Chabad minhag to name after people? Like specifically after relatives, grandparents?
I think it's a thing of kibbud av aim. I'm saying after the Rebbe's lost, Rebbe and Chana passed away, he named things after them, and that's why we name after Rebbeim and after grandparents and things like that passed away. It's an honor, it's a kavod. There are some Sephardim that have the minhag that they name after grandparents while they're alive also. Yeah.
And then you have more benefit if you don't give a name.
It's a hard book.
Women don't have the Puru mitzvah. What should motivate me to have children? So naturally, most of the time, a woman naturally has a desire to have a child. And what the Rebbe says, one shall have one child and taste that tremendous nachas and joy shall want to have more. That's just the words of the Rebbe.
Can I just add that I haven't heard people speak about this, but I've seen the Ram says it's a Durabanan for women. The mitzvah also applies to women Durabanan. So it's not like women are totally off the hook according to.
Well, you can't have a baby without the mother. I mean, ask a Democrat, sorry. Things might be different,
I'm saying in terms of
Just-
the mitzvah itself,
Right.
like, there are Torah authorities, including the Rambam, or at least the Rambam, who says that women do have the mitzvah at least Durabanan.
The way it learns is that we get the benefit, the schar.
We get the schar, we get the reward and all that, for sure. When it comes to chinuch also, the official mitzvah of chinuch is on the man. And a lot of the work is from the loving mother also. Okay,
Also.
The husband gets a jewelry. The wife gives her.
that's not a thing.
Really?
No, it's not a thing.
Even not by the Bible.
No, it's not a thing.
Really?
If somebody wants that and that works for their shalom bias, the question was, are you supposed to get a piece of jewelry every time you have a baby?
No.
A push present. It's
That's
not,
just a thing that
it's-
people do.
Really?
if it works for their shalom bias, then let it work. If you want to go by halacha, is he also buying her something for shalom shagalim every single time?
That's halacha.
That's halacha,
That, it's in the Kasuba about for the young children,
right?
about giving a new jewelry or clothes.
So that's halacha. A push present is not. Now, if that works for your shalom bias, that's fine. Some people want a piece of jewelry. They said, okay, if my birthday ends in a 0 or a 5, give it to me then. I don't want it every single. I'd rather want one big thing every 10 years than small things along the way. So it's not a thing. Glad you asked. But if it works for both of you and it works, whether it's money wise or it makes you both happy or whatever it is, that's fine. A great gift could be a postpartum massage also. It doesn't have to be a piece of jewelry, whatever your gift is. How often do you wash Negelwasser for a baby? So we mentioned Negelwasser when the baby is born to try to wash Negelwasser as soon as you can. Also, also to say Shema, Maida'ani, Shema with the baby and the psukim. There's actually a recording of the Rebbe saying Maida'ani and Shema. Do you have it? I'll send it to you and you'll remind me, no problem. But also, especially in the first few days, when is morning, when is night? If you're always in pajamas and you're in bed, right, for the first few weeks. So whenever you decide now is morning, okay, my da'ani, and that's when you're going to do your morning. And that's where you're going to, because the Rebbe spoke about saying Shema with the baby, and whether it's whatever it is, you decide when your morning is, and you decide when your night is going to begin. It could, the night could be when you're putting the other children to sleep, or 7 o'clock in the afternoon, even though the baby's going to sleep at 12 o'clock.
Also, you might need help. Like washing Negelwasser with a newborn is not a one-person job, in my opinion. I've never managed to do it one person. So just having in mind that
you
Just when they wake up.
it works.
After.
I mean, they wake up every 2 hours, but it works when you have someone.
Right,
I'm saying,
yeah.
like, you're
So
hoping
one of the
that-
Rebbeim, the Rebbitzin was makbid to wash every time she nursed him, and he always had a yarmulke and all that. In Hashem, yeah, that was what she was. She knew she was raising a Rebbe.
But I thought you was told to do that.
She knew she was raising the future Rebbe, exactly. So we can use that as a hira, but not not as an oppressor.
Yes.
If you manage to do it once a day, that's fine. And if your first few days was one long day, that's also fine. That's fine. That's fine. If there's no other support people available, is husband allowed to help? Your husband is always allowed to help. I'm assuming this is.
I'm like, let's clarify
Okay.
that.
I'm assuming this means during labor and your nida. This is
Or even after labor and you're.
This is an amazing, okay, first of all, if there's an emergency, if there's a imminent danger, absolutely, there's no question. This is a great question for a Rav. The Rabbanim are there to be your advocate, they're there to be your friend, and they are very, very creative, okay? They really, really are. I mean, I don't have to share stories that, but this is a great question on how my husband can help me when this and this is going on and I don't have any other help. Let's say a woman had a C-section and she's home, she's sent home, but she's not ready to do anything besides for maybe roll over to nurse her baby. And she needs to get out of bed. She needs to whatever. That's a great question for a Rav. Okay, so I'm not gonna give a further, I'm not gonna elaborate so much because you're gonna get your personal answer with that question. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
Husband not in the room. What about unconditional respect, attraction, love in every way I am and show up in this world? Seems conditional, only feeling a certain way based on false. I can't read the last word. I'm not what?
Basically, I was at a Shabbos people with this entrepreneur, and there was one woman, she's secular, she has her issues with faith, but I remember that there was like a law said how to respond, so I was just wondering if like you have insight in it. So she was saying that like she finds that to be like an unhealthy relationship between a man and his wife, because she was saying that like on the contrary, like there should be so much love that you should know this person is there for you in that moment.
He is there in that moment for you in a different way.
Right.
He's there doing the spiritual aspect and asking Hashem that everything should continue going smooth and everything should go just as planned in a healthy, happy way. We want a healthy, happy, there's not only one way. If this was the only way a husband can be there for a wife, life would look very,
What about
yeah.
What about the?
I mean, if there was the only way to express love between husband and wife is in a physical way, what happened to mutual respect, giving, sharing, doing things for one another, communication? There's so many other ways to be there for one another. I don't know, like, you know how, I mean, ever watch an old couple, they can have a conversation without having without an exchange of words, and you could walk in on that and it's so intense and they haven't exchanged anything. That doesn't happen. That's not physical.
Can you just repeat the question? Oh, not
Yeah, that was just like quickly written down, but I guess this woman was saying like, is my love conditional based on my husband seeing me only like when I'm perfectly dressed up? And she was saying like, when his attraction and his love, you know, like, isn't that the real test? That was kind of her question.
I want to repeat it.
Yeah, so almost like, is he only loving me when I'm looking like a model?
Basically, yeah.
And therefore he's not, because if he sees me in labor, then maybe that's not a good relationship. It doesn't show well on a relationship.
Giving birth is very, very, it's intimate in a different kind of way. You're expressing yourself in the most, your most vulnerable state. I know this is being recorded, but I don't know who's listening. But the sounds that you might be making during labor or giving birth might mimic the same sounds that you are in privacy with your husband. You're using those same hormones and that same strength and that same brain that's giving you that relaxation to come to a place when you're being fully intimate with your husband to birth that baby. You're being connected on such a soul level at that time. He doesn't have to watch you give birth to be connected to you. And viewing that, it's different when a husband is part, as much as he's part of the process, it's different as a husband being part of the process and a full labor support person being part of that process. It's hard, as much as they're involved, it's very, very hard for a husband to watch his wife in pain, in that kind of pain. the same way sometimes it's hard for a mother to be there as well. I've been there with clients and she wanted her mother there, but every time she said ouch, her mother said ouch twice. So we sent the mother on errands. We needed a lot of ice. And they kept on running out and spilling. We needed a lot of ice. So the mother was there, but not always is it in the way you imagine. That support is very, very different. What's going on there is so intimate. And so you're at your most vulnerable state. And that doesn't take away from your love. He's loving you unconditionally and amazingly, and he's doing what he needs to do at that time. In general, we need Hashem's brachas. At a time at birth, when a neshama is coming down, and we're considered as a woman that's in danger, we need those. That's what he's there for. He's holding down the fort in that sense. So he's really, really supporting you. He's just not holding your hand. He's holding the fireball, and that's what he's supposed to be doing.
I also want to add
Sure.
that there are things that you can prepare before. Like I know some couples that, for example, he writes her like a sign, or the
affirmation, exactly.
He records affirmation for her, or that he's able to be there with her and support her without, that. Yeah.
Does that answer the question a little bit?
It helps, yeah.
Okay. I'll tell you what also, before you've given birth, it's really hard to imagine that.
I know.
I know it's a silly thing to say.
No, even as I'm asking the question, I know that I'm coming from a point of view which is hard to relate to, and I know that. I guess the question is like, don't you want to know that this person can be with you in your most vulnerable state and still have the same affection and love for you? And this is kind of saying like, no, it's conditional. Like, it's a little bit like, I've heard this question and I understand it, and I feel like it's probably a common question. So like, I just feel it, and I just want to know how to answer it.
I think
Go ahead.
So basically, if I understand you correctly, the message of it that you're getting is that because he's not able to see her, and it might create, or the way it was said is that it might create an issue for him later because he saw her in such a state. So therefore,
Honestly, when you're be noticing anything around you, you might be noticing everything around you, but I forgot exactly what I was going to say. It doesn't mean that he's not accepting you.
yeah, I think I want to share of a husband who he doesn't have to be in a different building. Like he was just in a separate room. And once he was able to actually come in and she was covered in smears and he got to meet the baby, the first thing he said was, "You are so incredible." And I don't think it was, like I didn't see her, so therefore I wasn't disgusted by her loneliness or whatever.
It's more like a respect for her.
Yes, and that level
You
of
really
bond and
are-
respect can happen even if he's not in the room. Like she felt so loved and so unconditionally cared for, even though he wasn't there, and saw her through that, so to speak.
You're saying almost like that's what a woman truly means in his that.
Correct.
Also, sometimes men aren't able to like be that person to be like, you're so great. They'll show in other ways of like,
Exactly.
I'm gonna do all the laundry without you asking I'm going to do like the dishes.
I mean, there are
and
so many
that.
times that the husband is there, I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna be there, they're the one lying on the floor because it was just a little bit too much for them. We are strong women, and there's a reason why we're giving birth. They're really, really supporting us and doing everything that they can in their way that they can.
Okay. So you're saying that like Allah understands the true nature of the man and woman.
Hashem made this halacha. Hashem in his infinite wisdom, it was there for sure to protect the woman. It's in your most primitive, vulnerable state. It's the most beautiful, beautiful time. And you're not experiencing it separately.
I feel right.
You're experiencing it differently. No matter, even if he's standing here or there, he's never the one that birthed that child. You're just experiencing it differently. And yes, wow, you are incredible. What?
Like the thing is tend to look without looking. Tend to see without looking. You can be so connected without him having to be in a room watching.
Okay.
But he really is doing and supporting you. He's just not, again, it's not about you could hear his voice. He can be talking to you if that's what your anchor is. He's just not physically right here.
Okay.
Also,
I think
like
I get it.
through the pregnancy, you'll have the time to like sit and speak with your husband and say like, I really want you to do this.
Right.
Can you do this like this? And he'll say like, okay, yeah, I think I could do that, or maybe I'll have to like do something else, or like, can we talk about this? Like that's also a beautiful part of building the relationship together. You communicate what you need or what you think you need, and he says, okay, well, I can meet you there, or I could, yeah, I'm willing to do this for sure.
Right. You're saying it's a like partnership remains when it's
Absolutely.
Okay, what is a normal time frame for getting pregnant in the first year? I'm assuming during marriage, after marriage. If you're trying, first of all, enjoy yourself. Enjoy trying. But if a year goes by and you're trying and nothing happens, I used to say 2 years, but unless there's a known, after a year, if nothing, if you're not pregnant, then it doesn't mean it's a major issue. Just reach out. And it could be something very small. It could be just a little adjustment. It could be it's your cycle or whatever it is. Unless there's something specific that you know might be causing an issue. If someone knows that they have an unusually longer cycle, shorter cycle, PCOS or something like that, then get help right away. Otherwise, enjoy your time at the beginning. For sure, before a year, no need to worry. Also, once you begin trying again when to try again for your next child, I cannot answer you that. That will be something between you, your husband, your doctor, and your Rav. I touched upon it a little bit when we're talking about postpartum. Getting clean for mikvah is not just about getting that clean bedika. You should be, it's a whole package. You should be ready mentally, physically, emotionally, ready to be in that space of being wife and mother again. That falling in love stage of you and your baby. Remember that rest. Enjoy that time. Don't rush yourself to get to mikvah. Not because we don't want to be together, chas v'shalom, but the more you rest, the faster you'll heal, and the faster you might be able to get to mikvah. But you'll also be more rested as a person. You'll feel like you'll feel more a little bit in tune and back to yourself, and be ready to be that wife and mother to your other children properly. It's not just about getting that bedika clean, okay?
Yes.
Right?
100%.
Purpose and meaning of Shir Milas. The Shir Milas is, I think it's Kapitel Kuf Chaf Aleph in the Tehillim, Kapitel 121, and it talks about the protection of the baby. Protection, asking Hashem for protection, and it's like a prayer for protection for the mother and baby. How do newborn photos with parents work if the mother's nida? You can take wonderful, beautiful pictures without touching. You're holding your baby. You don't have to touch your husband. You could, and a good photographer can set you up in a way that looks like you're very close, but he can strategically be standing like kind of a little bit right behind you, like almost like not shoulder to shoulder, but like that. And you looks like you're much closer than you are. So you don't have to be touching to get close pictures. I hope that answers the question. Hindy, you're the best. Does it feel lonely or not being able to hug your husband after birth? It doesn't feel lonely because you're going to be, if you speak about what you need beforehand, the support that you need. What the question is, I'm going to rephrase this question. Do you feel lonely to be not be able to hug? What are you looking for in the hug? You're looking for a connection. You're looking for support. You're looking for something in that hug. A hug is easy, right? It's quick, easy, and done with. But what are you really looking for? Connection, support. Maybe it's the shower. Maybe you just want to sleep. Maybe it's just, okay, the baby is sleeping. Let's just sit down and have a tea together and feel like we have time to breathe. Maybe it's those things that you're looking for. It's, again, it's hugs in other ways, a non-physical hug. I hope that answers the question. Yeah,
Can I ask that?
sure.
A friend of mine, she gave birth, and she had a really hard time after. She couldn't be with her husband, and she was very upset. She said this is specifically the time when she wanted to be with him. I don't know all the halachas, obviously, but she was under the impression, I don't know, you could correct me if this is correct. She said he wasn't allowed to compliment her, and she was feeling very insecure, and she's like, this is the time I need my husband. Like, my body just changed, and he wanted to compliment me, he wanted to be with me, and I understand all this, but like, she's like, I don't understand. This is the time I need him.
Maybe
That, okay, so so adding on to that question, she said that she had a friend that felt very, very, it was hard for her during that period because her husband said that he couldn't compliment her. She kind of felt disconnected. I think an answer to the question would be, they were feeling disconnected, exactly that. It wasn't, you could compliment what's going on, doesn't mean you're two strangers. You are kind of like, when you're Nida, you're kind of like best friends. And when you're in Tahara time, you're like lovers. So when you're being in that best friend zone, you're expressing yourself in a different kind of way. So they probably weren't connecting, and she was feeling the lack of connection. It wasn't the lack of the hug or the intimacy. So finding ways now, building from, I'm gonna go back and from the day they got married, from before she got pregnant during those 9 months, were they finding ways in which to connect as a couple outside of the bedroom, outside of the dining room, as a couple outside? Because there's different ways you can express yourself physically, obviously when you're in your bedroom and when you're in your dining room or in the living room, but making it a point to connect and spend time as a couple as best friends, meaning out of the context of physical intimacy, will build up your relationship that much more emotionally, and you'll connect on an emotional level, and that will help you in those times when you need to connect as a couple during Nida.
What about the physical insecurity?
I remember a woman okay, so what about the physical, explain your question.
So this woman just went through like basically like a procedure. Her body changed, and she couldn't be with him. So she felt like this was the one time she wanted reassurance that I still think you're beautiful.
So that, I think, is not, that doesn't have to do with being Nida.
Okay.
I think that was, he would probably need to learn how to connect with her in a way that is talking to her, the support that she really needed.
Is that like halakhically not?
In 5 children.
Like I obviously don't know the halakha, like
Are you-
That-
are
I think
you
there are
asking
some
if he's
people when
allowed
they
to
need it, they won't say
compliment
like,
her
I love
during
you.
Yeah.
So it really also,
I wonder if
it could be that, but what it seems like she's saying is that she feels different within her own body, and she was waiting for her husband to compliment her on that. So-
won't compliment their wife.
So
They won't
some,
say I love you, they won't say certain things, they're kind of a, kind of like stuff of intimacy, they won't say certain things
Yeah.
because they're in need of. But I know some people won't do that. So I'm wondering if this is what
Yeah.
she's saying.
so I think that's a great question for a Rav, because sometimes there are times that a person understands the halacha a little bit too much. Okay, so I'm not trying to say anything about her or her husband, but this is a great time on finding ways to connect. And if she's saying, this is what I need to hear from you right now, call her of how, this is what I need to hear. How do we work on that? No problem. I remember a woman saying that she was telling me the story that she actually had a C-section. And they were going to Israel for, I think it was a wedding. I don't remember what it was. Now the tickets that they had today was, let's say, $900, and she was still Nida. And then the next day she was going to go to mikvah, and then the tickets the day after that was like double the price. So she knew that she would be harder to travel with her 2 little babies while she's Nida, and she was asking the Rav for like basically like a heter on how to do this traveling, and if it's okay to just do it like this, and he'll be able to help her. So the Rav, without a blink of an eye, opened up his drawer and said, "Oh, I have an emergency fund just for that. Here's $1,000 and change your ticket." It wasn't, I don't know where that emergency fund popped up on that spot, but it was sometimes about being creative. It's not, there's ways to work around things. There's a lot about, I'll say it in a nutshell, Torah is really not black and white. There's so much gray, and the way to navigate all that gray and to make it your personal Torah is with a Rav. Because when you have a Rav involved, you're doing the mitzvahs that level. And there's no guilt on you, because this is what the Rav says. Obviously, it's with a Rav that has, the Siyata Deshmaya and the Yerushalayim and all those things, but he's answering you for what you need. Sometimes it's not, you're answering the person, not the question, because there's so much in between. There really, really is. We don't drive on Shabbos and we eat kosher, but when there's certain circumstances, you absolutely drive on Shabbos because it's pekuach nefesh and someone's life is in danger, or whatever it is. This medication it's not 100%, but you're going to do that. There are certain circumstances, and when it comes to shalom bayis, the Rav helps you navigate that. And even when it comes to Nida, but understanding that a lot of the harchakais, sometimes there is leeway and sometimes there isn't. But again, it's Hashem is the one that outlined it, because Hashem knows what works. Marriage to begin with doesn't even make sense that it should work. Man and a woman were opposite enough. So the fact that Hashem created marriage and he outlined it, how it should work and how it should look and how Hashem is happy, that's the recipe for a happy marriage. And Hashem knows that. And if he gave us these mitzvahs to do, he knows that we can keep it. They're hard. They're not convenient sometimes. If Nida was easy, then I would wonder about their connection. I would wonder about their marriage, right? Of course it's hard, but that also makes that longing and that connection that much stronger. Do you recommend a cervical check to find out the presenting part? I think that means the presentation of the baby. You do not need a cervical check from that. You can see from the outside a good.
That's not the question, sorry.
It's okay.
You say something about not to do it in the first time, or like not, it doesn't matter after like the first pregnancy, but like the first time?
No, usually during a first pregnancy,
Yes.
the woman by labor, that's when dilation happens.
Dilation means that
The cervix is opening, but in a subsequent pregnancy, you could be open for a few weeks prior to birth. So if you're already open and you're having a cervical check, that can cause you to be NIDA because you're already open. That means they might be going to past the cervix. That's what I'm saying.
Someone should go to the first time.
There's no reason to do. There's no reason either way.
There's even studies that show that it introduces more bacteria.
Right. In having cervical checks for no reason or extra is really introducing bacteria to the vagina, to the cervix, and we don't want that. There's a,
You can.
you can ask that even if you're having a birth in the hospital, they'll probably want to do at least one upon arrival and maybe later on, but it's really a lot of times it's the woman that's asking because she just is looking for relief, but that's not giving you relief. Knowing to like, it's not really giving you the information that you're waiting to hear. Because
check and they'll say you're 2, and then 4 hours later, they're like, oh, you're 4. I'm like, wait, 4 hours and I'm only 4. And this makes you more stressed.
but really tuning into your body and watching the woman, they can tell really what you're up to. Okay, can you clarify when the husband can no longer be in the room? It says when being in the room is just for the birth. Okay, no, she's allowed to be in the room when she's NIDA. She shouldn't be in the room when she's giving birth. Can you change diapers in the room with sperm and the picture?
At which point is it considered giving birth?
When she's on, like,
When she's ready to give birth.
When the baby's
when
coming out.
she's put that ready to push the baby out.
Yeah. Can you change diapers in the room with sperm and the Rebbe's picture? That's a good question. Are you talking about opening the baby's pamper? That happens in shul by a bris. So you're allowed to open the baby's pamper. Are we talking about what's inside the baby's pamper? I never heard that you're not allowed to open it up in front of the sperm or pictures of the Rebbe. Talking about davening when there's the baby's pamper smells. Now, if it's a nursing baby, is different than its regular food.
For a nursing baby, I heard for sperm it's fine, and if they're not nursing anymore, it's real food, then you shouldn't do it.
And I personally never heard about in front of sperm. I only knew about the smell. So we will ask. Okay. When should you buy the Shira Milos card?
You
You can buy it now.
You can buy it whenever. That's not something that is something like preparing for the baby. I think that's probably what the question is trying to ask, because we don't prepare. That's probably what, yeah. So the question is, when should you buy the card? I think what the question is, generally we don't buy things in preparation for the baby. So that's a question in of itself. If you would ask a Rav, if there's a great sale going on, sometimes the Rav will tell you you could buy it and just keep it in someone else's house. If you need to buy something for the baby to come home with, and obviously you need to have it beforehand. I know a woman once asked the Rav about the car seat. She wanted to have it properly installed by a professional. The Rav said, absolutely do it beforehand. You can do it beforehand. So it really depends on, it really depends on what's going on.
So if it's something that's for you.
Right. So if it's anything for you, then you're preparing for you. What, that's not a problem. So
The Shira Milos card, I mean, like, I know for us, I use the Shira Milos card before babies are born.
right, it's protection. It's for you also. It's not just for the baby. Yeah,
I love to know.
exactly. What were you were just saying something? So right, so there's, first of all, Amazon Prime, you could have everything in your car and just click, and everything arrives the next day. But if you want to have that car seat beforehand because you want to have it properly installed is one thing, or if it's an amazing deal, clear with the Rav. They're your friend.
Yes.
Thank you so much, ladies, for having me. Thank you, Michal. I'll say my number again if you need anything. Hindy Greisman, 917-744-3299. 4670. Thank you, ladies. Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, everybody can just take one.
Is there what?
You recommend?
One that clicks with you.
Yes, such a great answer.
You're interviewing for your doctor. It's okay to go rough shopping. You're not going hetero shopping.
Yes.
That's very different.
Okay. Thank you, yeah.
Sure.
Good.